Hello and welcome back to Tachikawa. You are listening to Sakamichi Nights. My name is Matthew Boynton and I'm joined, as always, by Daniel Bellamy. How are you today, Daniel?
Great. I'm good.
I want you to search back through your memory to all of the different episodes of this podcast that you haven't listened to.
Yep.
Who are our current guestingest guests?
I think
Who's on that pantheon?
I mean, there's one man at the top. It's a Mount Rushmore of one.
No, there are two.
Are they tied?
Yes, I think it's a tie at the moment.
It's obviously Tyler.
Yep.
He's certainly the most memorable.
Brings the chaos every time.
Yeah, he does. Who's the other one? Is it Beard Matt?
Maybe, I don't know. The name is on the tip of my tongue. No.
Matt?
Maybe we should just introduce him and allow him to say his own name. Welcome back to the podcast. Now leading guestingest guest. Mac, how are you?
I'm very good, or I was until your attempts to... Was that attempts to insult?
We have a custom of insulting guests in my country.
Yeah, it is. It's important. Putting the nashi in omotenashi. That's what I feel like.
Yeah. Welcome.
But my offence is quickly assuaged whenever I'm looking at your two beautiful faces. So thank you so much for having me back. It's an honour to once again be your guestingest guest.
And thank you for removing your shirt, as is traditional. And I see you've brought a friend this time. Would you like to introduce your friend to us?
The one and only Sam from Baird Beer.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
Identity is so tied to his work, he has no surname, and that's the only way he can be introduced.
And I have no private life either. That is all I do now.
Fantastic.
That's all I do. But thank you. Thank you for having me. It's my first time, but I'm shooting for the stars. I someday will be the guestingest.
Whoa.
Yes.
A new challenger has entered the arena.
I'm putting my quarter on the screen. That's an old Street Fighter joke. I don't know if they did that in Britain. Okay.
We had coins, mate, and we had coins. We had Street Fighter.
Well, maybe you played it wrong or something. I don't know. Maybe it was digital in those days. But in America, we did it the old-fashioned way.
Right.
Well, with material like this, it's hard to see how you won't be taking the lead on the guestingest guest at some point. Dan, this is a day for firsts as well. We have two guests. That's been the first time in a while that we've had that. And also, you have prepared some material.
This is absolutely maybe the second time I've prepared something.
Okay, it's a day for seconds.
Oh, that's it? You're done? Should I go? All right.
Let's hear the questions that you have prepared.
Yeah, I thought
a la
that
James Lipton.
when we have guests on, we could ask them just kind of some baseline questions to get a feel for you and your experience with craft beer. We'll ask all the guests the same question. So why don't we'll go through the questions. We'll ask both of you each question. We go rather than 1 through 4 with one person then the next. Does that sound fair and reasonable?
That's great. I'd love to be felt around when I'm, a guest on a podcast.
It's only
Makes me
taken
feel
us
at home.
80-something episodes to settle into the format. Yeah.
All right, first question. What was the first craft beer you remember drinking?
I'll go with that. It was the first craft beer I ever had in Philadelphia. I met there with my brother, and I didn't really drink alcohol at the time, so he kind of set me on a dark path, kind of ruined my life. Thanks a lot, Niles. But
Your brother is called Niles.
Niles, yes.
Okay.
What is that?
I've only ever heard that name in the context of the sitcom Frasier.
Is
he named after the sitcom character?
No, he's much older than that. But it kind of justified him. He didn't get made fun of at school that much after that. But I was called Frasier, so it wasn't really that fun.
Named after that example of rippling masculinity, Niles Crane.
Yes.
What was the beer?
It was the Southern Tier Pumpkin Ale, and I'm ashamed to admit it because I know that, I know what the pumpkin spice beers, and the image they have among a lot of craft beer drinkers, but I just absolutely loved it because it was so far flung away from, the average beers that I had drank before that I just thought, oh shit. This is also beer. This is possible. And it opened my mind.
Southern Tier is, I don't know about now, but they used to be very highly regarded as a brewery.
It used to be, yeah. I don't see them anymore, so who knows?
Okay. Mac?
I think that question is a bit more complicated if you come from the UK, because there's been a big tradition of craft brewing in the UK.
Right.
A lot of it was 3.8% real ales.
Right, which you start drinking at like 11. So
exactly.
It's a long time ago.
And I can't remember what happened 33 years ago, especially because I was drinking a real ale at the time. So it would have been something in some kind of like cider festival. So if I had to pick an answer, it would be something called Old Bastard, which was a craft cider. Is that craft beer adjacent? Does that count?
Sure.
It was a
Go
craft to drink, an apple beer. I'm from Exeter in Devon, so big cider tradition there.
Yeah.
And that, I guess, is the first craft alcoholic liquid that I remember consuming. I think the first thing that would be called craft beer that wasn't real ale or a Belgian micro beer was probably from Harpoon Brewery in Boston.
Okay.
In 2002. So reasonably early in the craft beer tradition. Yeah, very delicious.
Nice. Number 2, what is your local craft beer hangout, Mac?
Well, I live in Shibuya-ku in Tokyo. So for a long time, my local was Good Beer Faucets.
Right.
But local, I think, is more a state of mind rather than immediate geography.
Oh, okay.
So my local is Sakamichi Brewing in Tachikawa, even though that's miles away from where I am.
Great. Good answer. Follow that one, Sam.
What is local? How do you define local? As a fellow Shibuya-kuian, but I'm kind of on the side of Shibuya-ku that is not quite so new, like around the Hatagaya area. I mean, I guess if you're asking what's local, that would be a new place called Pintology that opened up a few months ago. Honestly, how often do I go there? Not that much, but it is local, so it answers the question.
Okay.
US pints or UK pints?
US.
Ugh. 20% smaller.
Well,
Pintology is a good name, though.
It is.
It is.
It's
I
a
like the
fantastic
name.
name.
Yeah.
I can see you guys scratching off the Sakamichi and already trying to steal it over here.
Just rebrand everything overnight.
Exactly.
Question the third. What is the best or most memorable beer that you've had recently? You have had several of our beers here tonight.
Yes.
A couple of minutes ago, in fact.
They were clearly very memorable.
I have to. I'm going to jump in straight away.
Go for it.
In Japan, and talking now Japanese craft beer, Tama's Chocolate Orange version 3, Sakamichi version 3, is absolutely the most memorable beer that I've had recently. And I'm not just giving these answers because these two men have, been working out and look like they're threatening to smack me in the face if I don't say that I like their stuff.
You're not just doing it because of that.
There are many reasons. It's possible for there to be two reasons for things, Matthew.
Yes, I agree.
And, as you know, version 1 was one of the few beers I've rated 5 out of 5 on Untapped.
Yeah.
And I thought version 3 was closer to version 1 than version 2. And I was a big fan of it. So thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I'm not going to pick a Sakamichi one.
That's all right.
But I did have some wonderful Sakamichi beers today. But the most memorable one, I was in LA recently, and I've always wanted to try Pliny the Elder from Russian River, and I finally got a chance. Just bought a bottle from Whole Foods and drank it at the hotel. Very, very romantic.
As it was meant to be drunk.
It says that right on the bottle.
Yeah,
it's
serving
like,
suggestion.
It's like
Sitting in the bath in your suite.
you frou-frou bastard. You buy this, take it to your hotel. Don't even use a cup. Yeah. Don't use a cup. And I followed the orders, and it was absolutely rich, delicious, hoppy goodness.
Lives up to the hype then.
I think it does. It does.
Yeah, that's a very, very famous, very hyped beer.
Oh, yes. And I understandably,
Fantastic.
Now I know why.
That one's all about freshness as well, I understand. So they print the packaging date on the bottle. So you can look at that as you're crying under the shower in your hotel suite.
Which is exactly what I did. Well, crying, a little bit of puking as well. It was a long night.
Quite the tableau.
Yeah, straight from the brewery to your motel.
We just had a tube,
Fantastic.
All right, final question then. Have you ever poured a beer down the sink? And if so, why? You don't have to name the brewery, but have you found a beer unable to drink, and what was the reason for
that?
it?
Pliny the Elder just filled straight down the sink. Too bitter for me. Too bitter.
Oh, this is not what I had. This is not Asahi. Ugh. I'm more of an orthodox guy. on that note, I've poured many a beer down the drain.
Yeah.
I mean, just to pick up one recently, I don't want to name names, but there's a lot of the crafty beers out there where they put the craft on the label and they say aroma hops and stuff like that, and they try to sell it to the craft beer crowd. And I tried one of those from a company whose name starts with S.
Sakamichi Brewing.
Figure me out. But it was
now named Pintology.
Now named Pintology Brewing. But it was, and I knew what I was getting into when I bought it because it said craft beer on the label, but then below that the ranking was Happoshu. Right. It was not even officially a biru. It was a Happoshu, which for those listening, it's pretty much a low malt, very low malt beer. And
well, that's not entirely true, to be honest.
Okay, yes, it could have some herbs and spices or...
Yes, and the beer we will be drinking later on in this episode is a Happoshu.
Technically, yes.
Yes.
Fruited beers do count as Happoshus, yes. But yeah, I had to pour 3/4 of it down the drain. It was just undrinkable.
You are right. The beer surprise from Sapporo is indeed undrinkable.
Could not believe it.
I find that beer to be a very unpleasant surprise.
Beer surprise.
Yeah. Some surprises are good, which I think is what they're trying to go for.
Right.
And some surprises are very, very bad. And all but one of them have been insanely bad, and one of them was okay. I haven't poured any beers down the sink apart from Asahi Super Dry because in my culture, Britain, pouring a beer down the sink is considered some huge affront akin to some very horrific crimes. And so I have, it's not something I've done, but I've certainly been disgusted by some substances recently. Like Sam, there's a lot of stuff that's being passed now by the macro breweries here as craft that is just, frankly, undrinkable.
Beer balls. You ever had a beer ball?
I have had a beer ball. I have had a beer ball at Summer Sonic, which I attended on the guest list of The Offspring.
Okay.
Because Dexter Holland was a tour guest of mine earlier this year.
Yeah.
And they kindly put me on the guest list for Summer Sonic. And Suntory were a sponsor of the festival, and they had beer balls.
All the beer balls you could get your hands on.
You are pretty fly for a Mac guy, I'll give you that.
Exactly. Many, many jokes. The kids aren't all right. That's just saying the song title. Anyway.
How were the beer balls?
The beer balls, which you had to pay full price for, were they served them. So what is a beer ball? Beer ball is a 16% beer that Suntory have brewed with the intention that you're going to serve it highball style. So
mix it 1 to 4 with soda water.
Exactly. You're going to treat this as some kind of beer squash, as we would say in the UK, beer Ribena.
Responsibly. Yeah,
and then you're going to add soda in varying quantity depending on how alcoholic you want that liquid to be. Could be, so if you want a 3%, a 5%, a 7%, a 9%, and indeed a 16% beer, then the percentage you would add would be 0 soda. And on the ice. So it's tended to be this refreshing summer brew.
Beer balls on the rocks.
Exactly. And which is the marketing slogan. How do you work for Suntory's PR
Let's make
team?
sure these beer balls are ice cold.
How many beer balls can you get in your mouth?
Unfortunately, it neither has the refreshment of a whiskey highball.
Of a nice set of balls.
Yeah, neither does it have the firm, strong richness of an actual beer.
So it has neither the beer nor the balls.
We actually did drink some beer balls on this podcast.
That was the first time
I
I had some content, I think.
Yeah. And I remember that they are actually beer, according to the label.
Yeah, absolutely.
By all technicalities.
Yeah.
Those were definitely a Singapore.
Yeah.
To answer your question for you.
Thanks for that. You guys were the test run for the 4 questions, so well done.
Yeah.
We've chewed up some airtime.
Fantastic. That content was amazing.
We really chewed those beer balls.
Brilliant. And thank you to the AI for generating all our answers very quickly.
Brewery update. What have we been up to in the brewery this week, Dan?
What has changed since last week? We still have the 3 beers in the tank. We're getting ready to package those.
Yes, Shibasaki Session is probably going to be put in kegs tomorrow.
Ooh.
Probably be on tap this weekend.
Oh, snap.
Welcome back to Shibasaki Session. And then the other 2 beers that we have in the kegs, I reckon the Hazy IPA will be ready the week after that, and the Hoppy Pills the following week. So we're moving towards a rolling beer every week kind of schedule going forwards from here. We're not just here to talk about that, though. We are here to drink some beer as well. What is the beer that we're going to be drinking and celebrating this week?
This week's beer is the Carpenter's Mikan Ale from Baird.
Now, ordinarily, I would ask you to tell me about this beer a little bit, but seeing as we have somebody from Baird with us here in the room, Sam, I'm looking at you.
Oh, me. Sorry.
What can you tell us about this beer?
It's good.
Great.
Let's
dive into it.
Channeling Tyler there.
It is our... So, yeah, I work for Baird Beer. Was that established already? I'm not sure.
You work for Baird Beer?
Yes, I do.
Where I used to work as well. We used to be co-workers.
Hey, Kohai.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was actually the first fruited beer that Brian Baird ever brewed. Anyone that knows Brian knows what a stickler he is for tradition, and he's a very stubborn man. And he said he would never, ever brew a fruited beer because that is not how it's traditionally done. And then one day into the tap room walked the Carpenter with a beautiful carton full of, Mikans from his farm, organically grown on his mother's property. And he said, "Can you use these?" And Brian begrudgingly said, "Let's make a delicious frickin' beer." And that is the story of how the Carpenter's Mikan Ale was born. And it's still done that way. The brewers go up to his property, pick the Mikans. We steal them from Carpenter's mother.
Discrump them.
We do it very early in the morning before she gets up, which is difficult. I mean, we can't do it at night, but you got to get up before the old lady, and that's not easy, especially because she's Japanese. They get up at the crack of dawn. But so we get up there, we steal the Mikan, bring them back. As Matthew has probably talked about, they're all peeled by hand, and...
Can I jump in at this point?
Please do.
Because I want to say that we talked about content, your attempt just now, Dan, to create some content.
Yeah.
You put out some amazing content recently, a video of 3 different ways to peel a Mikan.
I'm glad you saw that.
Anticipating the release of the Carpenter's Mikan Ale. Which way do you peel yours? And it was absolutely brilliant.
Well, it was. I was in the brewery watching them peel, and I noticed they were all doing it a different way. Some people held the peelers and moved the fruit. Some people moved the fruit or moved the peelers and held the fruit. Some people were doing a boat, like a salsa type of thing. Moving them both.
I have to pull you up on a technical point there. They were zesting that fruit, not peeling it.
Sorry. Yes, technically it is zesting. You're only taking that very top layer off.
Yeah.
What? So the content was wrong?
Yes.
Oh no!
I'm sorry. I used the wrong terminology. But you gotta use words that the people understand. You gotta talk to the people.
Yeah, that is true. Well, I think the real point here,
yes,
zesting or peeling notwithstanding, is that it is a fantastic beer.
That's
and actually my favourite of Baird's seasonal beers.
Oh, you say that to all of them.
Why do we get stuck into the beer? Alright, welcome back. I predicted this would be a chaotic episode, and I think I've been proven right so far. We're all sitting here with glasses of the Carpenter's Mikan Ale in front of us. Who wants to tell me, what does this beer smell and taste like?
In true Kanpai Planet fashion, I have to go on the nose.
It smells like beer.
And it does indeed smell like beer, and there is a very distinct Mikan note. But what I like about it, compared to many, many other fruited beers, is that it's not in your face, fruit and floral notes. This is very clearly a beer that's been fruited as opposed to some overly, exuberant ale that is really I'll try again.
Well, I think what you're trying to say is that it's a good beer that has fruit in it,
Yes.
rather than a fruited beer.
Exactly
A fruity
right.
beer, right.
Exactly. And I think that's why I respond so well to it. You guys make many beers of varying levels of fruitiness, and this is absolutely my favourite.
Well, thank you.
This is the correct level. What I'm trying to
is the
say is
correct
this is the
level.
correct level of fruitiness.
We hit
in a
that.
beer.
We hit it right on the head.
Which is a hard nail to hit year after year because you're dealing with a natural ingredient, right? As we have mentioned,
Right.
the Mikans are all zested and juiced by hand. Of course, that's in addition to the malt being different every year and the hops being different every year.
Yeah.
So coming out with a beer that is so well balanced year after year, it's a real difficult needle to hit with a hammer, so to speak. Sam, what do you think of this beer?
I agree that it's out of all the fruited beers that we do, it's one of the most like, oh wow, that's fruity. I think this and probably the ume beer that we do are probably like the most, oh wow, I really get that fruit. But a lot of them are very, our Baird beers, fruited beers are very subtle, and it's in some ways that works a lot better. But yeah.
Well said. Dan, is it good?
Yeah.
Great. Moving on. I'm sorry, I've taken your thunder away. You love describing beers. Describe this beer for us.
I kind of do it as like it has to be done. Someone's got to do it. I have a question about this beer, actually. I'm on the Baird website now, and under the malts, they list chocolate malt. Would that just be in for the color, do you think?
Wow.
Because I can't imagine you want that. There's not going to be a large quantity of it. So
I'm sure it's almost
just to
nothing.
darken it a little bit.
Maybe you have to add a little bit of color, or maybe just to add a little bit of, I don't know, the smoky umami-ness to it,
Right.
just to kind of reflect against the sweetness of the Mikan.
Right.
Because, like we said, this is one of the most Mikan-y beers that fruity beers that we do, and so you probably want a beer that would reflect upon that well, would balance with it.
Right. Maybe grounds the malt bill a little bit.
Right.
You guys make what, another Mikan beer?
We do the Shizuoka Natsu Mikan.
And why is it that I prefer this one so much more than that?
Maybe you're not a fan of tart Mikan.
Natsu
maybe?
Mikan's a very different fruit.
Yeah, it's a more tart fruit.
Natsu Mikans are not Mikans, right? It's a different kind of fruit.
Right.
Yeah, and maybe because the base beer for the Natsu Mikan is more of like a wheaty. It's a very light, like wheat beer.
Yeah.
Like an American wheat.
Those sound like the correct answers. Those are all things that would make me not like a beer as much as I like this.
Yeah, I don't know why there
Mystery
is chocolate
sauce.
malt in this. Maybe Brian has heard that chocolate and oranges are an excellent combination. But it must be a very, very subtle note.
Right.
It is slightly dark, right? It's slightly darker than a pale ale or an ale might be. So there might be a little bit in there, but it must be a very tiny amount of chocolate malt in here if there is any. Well, what else have you got to say about the flavor and the aroma of this?
Nothing that hasn't already been said. I think it's great. It's also, I don't think we noted this, but it's 7%, which is reasonably strong. But maybe you need that with the sweetness from the Mikan. Maybe the alcohol helps to balance out that sweetness a little bit. I'm not sure, but it doesn't drink like 7%. I think.
No,
you could probably get pretty wrecked on this.
Pretty crushable.
Yeah,
And it's also, I think, surprisingly bitter. You probably don't pick up on that right away because of the alcohol that's in there. But like 60 IBUs or something?
40. That's quite a lot.
I guess maybe some from the Mikan zest as well. But that helps to balance out any sweetness that might come through from the Mikan juice, any acidity that might come through from that, as well as that fairly high level of alcohol that's in the beer as well.
I think that's one reason why I enjoy it, because it's kind of like biting into a Mikan the way you would an apple, just careless of the zest or any of the white bitter parts in the middle. So you get those white bitter parts, but then you also get the sweet juice, and it all kind of mixes around in your mouth. And
Have you done this? Just like bitten into the peel?
well, you didn't ask me about my hobbies, so I didn't touch on that. But I'm a ferocious Mikan biter.
If
you
you just
watch
biting into a whole Mikan, just chewing the whole thing in one go. Imagine that, Mac. Imagine it.
Imagine the views you could get on YouTube for that.
Well, when I saw
Imagine eating a banana with the skin on, Mac.
when I saw your video,
Eating a durian without cracking it open.
Imagine these things.
I'm imagining them, and that's exactly the point of having an imagination. It's like when people say, "Oh, you can't imagine what it's like to have
biting into a
children."
raw onion with the skin on it.
When people say you can't imagine what it's like to have children, that's one of the falsest statements ever made. No, that's exactly the purpose of an imagination, to conceive of things that you don't have. And given that there's many data points into what the experience of having children is like, it is very easy to imagine. All the other things that you've said, very difficult.
Let's move forwards with our imaginations, why don't we? And try and pair this beer by the power of our imagination. As you will know, Mac, maybe you don't know, Sam, every time we try a beer on the podcast, we also spin the wheel of pairings to pair the beer with one of 8 different options. But of course, we can't have the 2 most recent options.
Music and location.
All right, so what's it going to be this week?
I'm going to preface this by saying this is an excellent 2-bit beer.
Number 6, activity. Here it is. So, what activity would you love to be doing whilst drinking this beer? I already know what Dan's answer is going to be, so we'll come to him last. Mac or Sam?
Although they make this beer at the end of January, typically, right? Sort of this season.
When it's released then.
Yeah.
Which means we brew it months before that.
Exactly. So, like I said, even though this beer was made in 1857 and finally released now,
Barrel-aged.
you know, it's such a refreshing beer. It's of course going to remind you of slightly warmer times. So, for me, I would like to be enjoying some hanami or a cherry blossom party while drinking this beer.
How very topical. Which park would you like to be doing this hanami in?
Don't say it. Don't say it.
Yoyogi.
Oh my god.
Okay. This is a stronger reaction than I was expecting. And what is it about Yoyogi Park that would make you want to have the hanami there?
Well, it's got a special place in my heart, as it's been the location of the formerly known as the Maction Planet and Shochu Pro collaboration hanami in association with Baird Beer, typically held on the last Sunday in March, as it was from 2017 to 2019, before the COVID-19 global pandemic put paid to that for 3 years. But luckily, now that event has returned, I can imagine, because that's what imaginations are for, what it's going to be like to maybe consume this under the cherry blossom canopy.
Nice callback.
Can we get a keg of this for the hanami?
If you'd like, sure. If we have any left,
Can you put one aside?
I'll check on that. Yeah.
Fantastic. A reveal
For
there
you,
for
anything.
people listening in
For
right
you,
now.
Mac, anything.
Fantastic.
Anything.
Deals made on the Sakamichi Nights podcast.
Blood. We're gonna, cut our fingers and do a blood promise over this.
Let's just take the
That's
rest
the
of
next segment, so just hold on.
Let's just take the rest of the keg that these guys have got. Just
Carry it to the station.
brilliant.
So, doing some hanami. How about you, Sam?
I'm gonna go the other way. I would not imagine drinking this in warm weather. I think once it warms up, it might not be quite. I think the fruitiness really resides in the temperature and the coolness of the beer. So I would actually drink it like in front of the fireplace after a day of skiing. And I've only been skiing 2 days in my entire life, so this is quite an imagination thing for me. Hey, I called back too.
There you go. Nice.
But-
Very good. The
Thank
master of the multiple callback. The American Stuart Lee, they call him.
Hey, if the British can do it, we can do it reasonably not bad. But yeah, so I would imagine drinking it in front of a fireplace after skiing, with really tired legs. I don't want to move, but oh my god, this beer is so good. I just want to have a couple pints.
What would you be wearing in this situation?
Wow, this is... The imagination just sprawls onward and onward. Sweatpants.
Oh, the most erotic of clothing.
Sweatpants and heat tech.
Wow, you sound like you're going to be toasty warm drinking a nice cold beer.
Yeah.
Dan, are you also going to be wearing sweatpants while you're tubing?
No, that's ridiculous. I just been thinking about tubing this whole time and not really listening. And then I was like, maybe I should say something other than tubing, but I couldn't think of anything in like the gap between having that thought and you turning to me. So guess what my answer is going to be?
Tubin?
Yeah, I don't have anything better than that. But I do think, I agree with Sam that this 7% I think tells you that this is meant to be a wintertime beer, right? Like, I think if you wanted to release something like this in the summertime, you would drop the alcohol a little bit. That being said, I'm going to use my imagination and imagine that 7% is a fine beer to drink while tubing down a river in the summertime. Because this beer tastes like dappled sunlight through trees hitting your body. Like you would get at a hanami, for example. You know, you're under the tree, you got a bit of shade, you got a bit of warmth, you're not getting burned, you're feeling good, drinking this beer. Same thing when you're tubing, you know? You get a little too hot, you tube your way over to the side, you go under some trees, you know, maybe you see a snake. It's cool.
Well, the good thing about tubing is you can just dip your beer receptacle into the water and cool it down.
Yep, cools along, right along with you.
Yeah, that's quite a picture that you painted there.
Yeah, man.
You didn't mention the sweatpants at all, though.
No, I did. You asked if I was wearing them. I said that would be ridiculous.
Sorry, I tuned out.
You've never been tubing?
Tuned out most of your answer.
Right.
I'm going to go in a slightly different direction. Have any of you ever seen the film Apocalypse Now?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Remember when they're on the boat and they get to sort of the last base up the river, and there's like, where's your commanding officer? Don't know who the commanding officer is. But then they also go and see a girly show, and the girls have to be rescued by helicopter. Remember that scene?
Yes.
What would you want to be drinking if you were at that show?
If you're a girl?
No, if you're in the audience.
Is the correct answer the Carpenter's Mikan?
Yeah. I think that would be the perfect accompaniment to watching that show. Please do. Yes, please do. As endorsed by Francis Ford Coppola. But yeah, I think this beer smells like victory to me, and I would like to watch it whilst seeing the entertainment air evac out of the show at the last base going up the river into Laos or Cambodia. I think that just speaks for itself. I'm surprised none of yous picked that, to be honest. I mean, it's so obvious. I was just reading the temperature of the room.
Maybe it was too obvious for us.
It's a little on the nose. I know, it's a little on the nose. Speaking of creatives being air evac'd from a horrific situation, both of you are kind of creative people, aren't you? Have you ever had to be evacuated from a show by helicopter?
I can't afford, in the kind of content I create, I just can't afford helicopters, which is the only reason why I've never been evacuated by helicopter from, for example, filming one of my videos or appearing on a podcast.
What is that noise?
I was hoping that's some extra editing for you, Matt, to add in a sound effect for possibly the first time in Sakamichi Nights history.
In true Sakamichi fashion, you should probably be air evac'd by a hot air balloon landing outside that you get into the basket of.
Beautiful.
Strangers.
Phineas Fogg.
So, Mac, we're all familiar with the work that you do on YouTube and your podcasting work as well. Sam, what about you? You do some creative stuff as well? Can you tell us about that?
A little bit here and there. So, of course, I work on the Baird Instagram, Twitter, those social media things.
Yep.
And then in my private time, I do like to get up on stage and make people laugh. There's a lot of ways to do that. Some people, they just get naked. Some people, make fools of themselves. I do a little bit of everything, though.
Right.
Mainly stand-up comedy.
In English or in Japanese?
Right now, mostly in Japanese, because that's what I've done longer. But so recently, I know but in Shibuya, the new Tokyo Comedy Bar has opened up. They opened up last year in the middle of a pandemic. Perfect time to open up the comedy bar. The great little craft beer comedy bar. And so I know the owners, and I love to go there and perform in Japanese, and I'm working on my English. I mean, not the language itself.
Still a work in progress. Yeah.
My ego is not very Jozu, but yeah, I'm working on my English material. But yeah, I feel like I'm a little bit disappointed because at the start of the show you didn't introduce me as Sam, who has performed at the Hollywood Improv. Take what you can get, I guess. But I did bomb at the Hollywood Improv.
Why didn't you just improvise and introduce yourself like that?
Oh, man. Just you make me aware of all the regrets that I didn't have until I met you.
Yeah, which is many.
As is tradition in Mac's country.
Exactly.
Do you feel like you're funnier in Japanese than in English?
Do you feel like wait. Do you feel like you're funny in Japanese?
Thank you for the correction. I feel like I have more material in Japanese and I'm more comfortable. I feel like it's easier to mess up in Japanese because I can just play off the dumb foreigner thing. Whereas in English, it doesn't. Even though I am a dumb foreigner, it doesn't
you can play up the dumb foreigner thing.
I should work on that one.
Perform in London, you can play up the
dumb foreigner. I tried it in Hollywood and they didn't quite go for it. But
I got to say though, it's absolutely incredible to be able to do stand-up comedy in a language that's not your native language, and that is extraordinarily impressive.
Well, I mean, even though you've never seen it yet, you don't know how bad I can be.
No, I have seen it, actually. I've attended the Baird anniversary events down at the Shusenji Brewery, and for one of them, in 2021, Sam and some other comedians performed. And some of them performed in Japanese. For example, BJ Fox, who's the founder of the Tokyo Comedy Club, told a hilarious joke about how the terrible British weather was just French propaganda. Yes. And he told it in Japanese.
Yes.
I think the Japanese for propaganda is indeed propaganda.
Propaganda, yeah. And that's what I love about humor is like there's that joke there, but the thing is his English take on it and his Japanese take on it are totally different. The English joke is that the French, the whole English have bad teeth and bad weather and bad food. That's just French propaganda. Ha ha ha. Audience laughs. But when he does the joke in Japanese, people go, hey, like they're learning something. And so the whole joke in Japanese is that people don't get that it's a joke.
Right.
So he kind of, goes more meta with it.
What is the joke you've told in Japanese that has killed the hardest?
Recently thinking is probably the joke about how when I came back from the U.S. and I said, I went to the U.S. recently. I went to L.A. and I got off the plane and I was so shocked because there were just so many gaijin everywhere. I mean, of course, I phrased it differently, but
in Japanese.
Yes. In Japanese, yeah. I was like, is this the Roppongi of America? What's going on? Why are there so many foreigners?
It's good. Mac, what about you? How's your creative business going? Have you got anything in the pipeline that you want people to know about?
My biggest challenge for 2023 is that my primary work involves me being a tour guide around Tokyo, and that it looks like it's going to go very well in 2023. Thanks to...
The other members of The Offspring have already booked their tours.
They have. Check my Instagram for photos of me drinking with noodles. So my biggest challenge is trying to manage the Kanpai Planet Japan Drinks content creation around actually trying to also make some money, which was problematic for the last 3 years. I started the year with a video about Narazake, my first fully sponsored video. So I was paid money to say nice things about delicious sake, which I was sent.
So you've sold out at last.
It was fantastic, yeah.
You've been trying to sell your reputation for a long time.
I have.
Finally,
and then
finally bought it.
Finally, somebody bought it and sent me absolutely fantastic drinks with a heritage going back centuries that I really enjoyed. And then I was able to say that I enjoyed them, and I was paid to say that I enjoyed them. And it was great. I really enjoyed that experience.
That does sound good.
I hope that for example, the next time I rave about Sakamichi brewing, I hope I can be paid for that. It seems like a real alignment of things that I love. Making a living and drinking delicious beer.
Let me just burst that particular bubble for you.
Yeah, exactly. You guys can't even pay yourselves. Anyway, so that's my big challenge for this year. So I actually don't want to commit to a timeline. I'm working on a few videos at the moment. And I promise I am working on my first beer video.
Ooh.
Which I promised every single time I have been on this podcast. And I have not delivered yet.
Is it entirely AI generated? When you say working on, do you mean feeding prompts into
Someone is
ChatGPT.
working on it.
Yeah,
Something
ChatGPT.
is working on it.
I need 1,500 words on Japanese beer to shut these guys up. But go. So yeah, but you're going to see me reviewing some classic whiskies this year. You're going to see an interesting video that I want to make about the history of Asahi Super Dry, which is, whatever your thoughts on the liquid, an absolutely fascinating drink. It's actually not just Japan's biggest selling beer, but it's actually Japan's biggest selling fast moving consumer good. So it outsells Coca-Cola and Boss Coffee and many, many other liquid substances here.
Is that because you pour so much of it down the drain?
Constantly, yeah, exactly. I have to, there's nothing I like better than celebrating a victory by cracking open a can of Super Dry and pouring it down the sink. So yeah, thanks everybody who's listening for the support, and hopefully, despite the challenges, I can deliver some interesting content to you guys this year.
So what you're saying is that you may be too busy this year for creative work such as creating videos or appearing on podcasts. So Tyler, I know you're listening. This is your chance. You have been knocked off your perch. Come back, reclaim your crown. Mac is too busy selling out to whoever will have him.
Maction Planet, it gets very busy during the peak times in Japan, and indeed off-peak times as well. I'm often either guiding for the entire 14 hours in the day or doing an 8-hour tour followed by a 4-hour evening tour. But whenever Tyler appears next on the podcast, the evening immediately after will be mysteriously free, regardless of whether I'm booked or not, so that I can come here and immediately reclaim my crown.
You're going to bring a tour in here.
Exactly.
Next up, excellent craft beer and the inner workings of a Japanese drinks podcast.
But Mac, you promised us a Buddhist temple. But
There's something very zen about this experience, believe me.
Exactly. These guys built their own furniture here. Isn't that what?
It's as zen as it gets.
Possessions are fleeting.
Speaking of fleeting pleasures, Dan, do we have anything coming up in the fridge or on the tap boards this weekend that you think people ought to know about?
Well, as you said, probably we're going to have Shib Sesh coming back. Probably.
The
Do we
return.
have space for it?
I hope
That's
so.
the question.
Yeah.
We put Faction Brewing in the fridge, cans from Faction. This is their first time in Japan a week ago. That's mostly sold out now. But there's another brewery that's just come to Japan called 21st Amendment. And we got a pretty full shipment of 21st Amendment. They brought over a lot of different beers, the importer did. And I couldn't decide between them, so I just got one of each. Not one can of each, but just one of each kind, basically. So we have a pretty wide range of mostly IPAs from them. But we're going to put those in the fridge. They look really good. They're good-looking cans.
Excellent. I'll look forward to those. Sam and Mac, thank you very much for coming on to be on the podcast. If people want to see more of your nonsense, where should they go to do that? Sam?
Please, check out the Baird Beer social media. You can find me on stage sometimes at the Tokyo Comedy Bar. February 8th, we are having our monthly showcase that we do in Japanese. I'm going to be emceeing. Come on down. Also, we're going to be starting a Japanese podcast about stand-up comedy, where we watch Netflix stand-up comedy specials and talk about them. So if you're Japanese and want to know about stand-up comedy, check that out. It's called Stand-Up Comedy Labo. And as usual, drink more Baird beer and be happy.
Mac, how about you?
If you're interested in my tour business, then please go to mactionplanet.com. And if you're interested in Japan's drinks, then please check out youtube.com/kanpai-planet and Kanpai Planet and Maction Planet across all socials. Unsurprisingly, none of those names were taken before I got to them.
Dan, where should people go to find out more about your nonsense?
Here. I'm always here.
Always here, always ready with more nonsense. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. Stay safe, and we will see you again next time.